The smell of fresh ink and disinfectant hung in the air when it happened. The shop door banged open, and the room shifted from the quiet hum of tattoo machines to the coarse laughter of trouble. 3 men swaggered in all beer breath and false bravado. One of them, tall, broad-shouldered, with a smirk that felt like a dare, closed in on her chair. Without warning, his hand slid across her hip and up her side, fingers lingering in a way that made the entire shop feel colder. Laughter erupted from his buddies as he whispered something crude in her ear. She didn't flinch on the outside, but inside fire was building. Her name was Marissa Kane, 28 years old, a self-taught tattoo artist with a reputation for precision and artistry. Her shop, Ink Haven, sat on a corner in downtown Portland, a safe space for clients to express themselves through art. She'd fought hard to build it, long nights, sketching endless hustling, proving to the neighborhood she could run with the best. That afternoon, though, the Bullies' intrusion threatened more than her pride. It threatened the one place she felt untouchable. The lead, a man named Derek, was a known nuisance around the block. He'd heckled her before from across the street, tossing comments about girls with needles and how she should ink something private. But this time, it wasn't from a distance. This time, he was inches away, his buddies blocking the doorway so no one could slip out unnoticed. Marissa's regulars froze in their chairs, unsure whether to intervene. One client, a college kid with a fresh forearm piece, muttered under his breath, but didn't dare move. The tension thickened when Derek grabbed her arm, not just to get her attention, but to squeeze, testing her reaction. She yanked it back, glaring at him. "What's the matter, sweetheart? Can't handle a little attention," he sneered, his buddies chuckling behind him. She wanted to answer, to unleash every ounce of fury boiling inside her, but she bit it back. Years of surviving in a male-dominated industry had taught her one thing. The best revenge wasn't loud. It was precise. The men didn't stop at groping. They mocked her designs, pointing at framed art on the wall and twisting the meanings into something filthy. One leaned over her station, knocking over an ink bottle just to watch it spill. Marissa's jaw tightened. Her clients looked away, avoiding her eyes, as if witnessing her humiliation was a crime they couldn't unsee. When they finally left, still laughing, still making comments, she refused to repeat. The shop was silent except for the faint buzz of a machine left running. Marissa stood there, ink on her gloves and rage in her veins. She knew Derek and his crew would be back. Men like that didn't just disappear. They returned hungrier for the reaction they thought they'd earned. And that was fine, because the next time, she wouldn't just stand there. The next time, she'd be ready. She peeled off her gloves, tossed them into the trash, and began mopping up the mess. With every sweep of the mop, she replayed the moment in her head, not to wallow, but to plan. There were ways to make a man regret touching her. Sharp, quiet ways. She'd studied elbows, knees. Leveraged self-defense wasn't foreign to her, and she knew exactly how to use it without leaving herself exposed. Outside, the last streaks of daylight bled into the horizon, and the glow from her shop's neon sign painted the sidewalk red. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear Derek's laughter fade into the night. She smiled, but it wasn't a smile anyone would mistake for kindness. Marissa locked the front door earlier than usual that night. The shop was empty, but the echoes of the afternoon lingered like a bad smell. She sat on the worn leather couch in the break room legs, stretched out, replaying Derek's smirk in her mind, until it etched itself deeper than any tattoo she'd ever inked. Every detail of the encounter gnawed at her, the way his hand had gripped her, the mocking tilt of his head, the glint in his friends' eyes as they enjoyed the spectacle. She'd been in tough spots before. She'd been catcalled walking home late, shoved aside at conventions by arrogant artists who thought women didn't belong behind a tattoo machine. But this was different. This was her sanctuary, and they had violated it. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text from Max, the college kid she'd been tattooing when the bullies barged in. "You okay? Want me to talk to a buddy at the precinct?" She stared at the screen. It would have been easy to call the cops, file a harassment complaint, maybe even get them charged. But she knew Derek police reports wouldn't change him. A man like that thrived on thinking he was untouchable. She didn't want him in a cell for a night. She wanted him carrying the memory of her as the last person he ever dared to put hands on. She typed back, "I'm fine, thanks, Mac." She wasn't fine, not yet, but she would be. The next few days, Marissa kept her routine steady, acting as though nothing had happened. But behind the calm, she was collecting pieces. She started with social media. Derek wasn't hard to find. His Instagram was full of gym selfies, bar nights, and low-effort memes about alpha males. She scrolled, studying his habits. He tagged the same two guys, Big Tom and Eddie, in nearly every post. Their haunts were predictable. A dingy bar on 5th Street, a pool hall near the waterfront, and she noted with interest a fascination with tattoos. They followed several local tattoo shops. They even posted about wanting new ink soon. Perfect. Marissa began working late, sketching new designs that she pinned to the shop wall flash sheets that would appeal to Derek's ego. Bold, aggressive look at me pieces. She made sure to post them online, tagging her shop, leaving the bait in plain sight. She also adjusted her space. The counter where customers usually lean now had a subtle edge just enough to bruise if someone got shoved against it. The back corner, near her workstation, was cleared for movement. She kept her heaviest ink machine close its weight solid in her hand. And most importantly, she wore her leather cuffs not for fashion, but for padding around her elbows. At night, she practiced. Slow, deliberate movements. Stepping in close. Driving the point of her elbow up and back. She'd taken a few Krav Maga classes years ago, enough to remember that the elbow was a weapon most people never saw coming. By the 4th night, she felt the coil of tension inside her turn into something sharper. Anticipation. She didn't have to wait long. On Friday, just after closing, she stepped outside to lock up. When she spotted them across the street, Derek, Big Tom, and Eddie leaning against a lamppost, laughing about something she couldn't hear. Derek caught her eye and grinned like they were old friends. "Hey, Ink Girl," he shouted. "We were just talking about you." She smiled faintly and called back, "I've got a spot open tomorrow. Free ink for you boys if you're not chicken." Derek's eyes lit up exactly as she'd hoped. "Free for us, hell yeah." She turned, walking back into the shop without waiting for a reply. The trap was set. Saturday afternoon came, draped in a deceptively calm sky, pale winter light filtering through the front windows of Ink Haven. Marissa had opened the shop early, but not for customers, only for preparation. Every move she made was deliberate, the station cleared, except for essential tools, the mop bucket emptied, and set aside the floor free of anything she could trip on. She checked the hidden camera mounted behind a row of paint bottles. One click, and the small red light blinked to life. She wore black jeans, boots with firm grip, and a fitted charcoal shirt that left her arms free to move. The leather cuffs were back on her wrists, snug enough to keep her forearms steady. Her hair was pulled into a tight braid, nothing loose that could be grabbed. This wasn't a normal workday. This was staging. At 1:30 p.m. Sharp, the front door creaked open. Derek swaggered in first, smelling faintly of whiskey, despite the early hour. Big Tom followed tall and round like a bear, his jacket sleeves barely containing his arms. Eddie trailed behind, thin and wiry, scanning the walls like he was casing the place. "Well, well," Derek drawled, his gaze crawling over her. "Thought you might have been scared off after last time." Marissa kept her tone neutral. "I don't scare easy." She motioned toward the chair. "You wanted free ink. Take a seat." Big Tom flopped onto the leather seat, the vinyl squeaking under his weight. Derek stood behind him, leaning casually on the headrest. Eddie meandered toward the counter, pretending to examine the flash sheets. Marissa put on gloves, snapping them just loud enough to draw their attention. "You're sure you want this design?" she asked Tom, holding up the bold skull and dagger piece she'd prepped edgy enough to bait them, but meaningless enough to keep her from wasting real art. "Yeah," Tom grinned. "Make it badass. Something that says I don't mess around." The irony almost made her laugh. As the machine buzzed to life, Derek leaned closer, his voice low and full of the same sleaze as before. "You know you could make a lot more money if you did private sessions. I've got ideas for where you could put the ink." She kept her eyes on her work, her jaw steady. "Not interested," he chuckled. "Didn't sound like that last time when you—" Before he could finish, Eddie laughed from across the room, picking up a framed photo of her with her mentor. "Cute. Bet he taught you everything you know." "Put that down," she said sharply. Eddie grinned, but didn't move. That was when Derek's hand landed on her shoulder again. Heavier, this time fingers pressing in, as if testing how far he could push. The old rage surged, but she tamped it down. "Not yet. Derek," she said softly. "You might want to step back." He smirked. "Or what? You gonna poke me with that little needle?" Her lips curled in the faintest smile. The game was over. She pressed the machine's foot pedal, letting it buzz menacingly in the air, then set it down on the tray. Without breaking eye contact, she turned toward him, stepping into his space so quickly he didn't have time to flinch. The heel of her boot anchored her hip twisted, and her elbow came up hard and fast, smashing into the side of his jaw with a crack that echoed in the quiet shop. Derek's head snapped sideways, his body stumbling back into the counter so hard it rattled the bottles. Eddie froze mid-step. Big Tom's eyes went wide. Marissa didn't raise her voice, but the steel in it cut through the air. "Now, we're done playing." Derek staggered, clutching his jaw, eyes wide with shock that quickly twisted into rage. He started, but the words slurred out, muffled by the pain. Marissa didn't give him time to recover. She stepped forward, closing the distance, her stance low and balanced. Big Tom made a move to rise from the chair, but she swung her left arm across palm, open, shoving him hard into the headrest. The momentum kept him pinned, and she turned her focus back to Derek. "You want to touch someone?" she said coldly. "Touch the floor." Before he could answer, she stepped in again. Another elbow strike, this one lower, into the meat of his ribs. The air rushed out of him in a sharp grunt, and he doubled over, stumbling to one knee. Eddie finally snapped out of his frozen state and lunged toward her. She pivoted, sidestepping him with a precision that came from hours of late-night drills. As he passed, she hooked her arm under his and used his momentum to slam him chest first into the counter's sharp edge. He yelped, clutching his side the wind knocked from him. Big Tom roared from the chair, swinging a meaty arm in her direction. She ducked under it, the movement clean and practiced, and drove her elbow back into his gut. The impact landed with a dull thud, and his breath whooshed out like a popped tire. He collapsed into the chair, gasping, his face red and shocked. The shop was chaos now. Bottles rattling, the scent of spilled ink in the air, the high-pitched hum of the tattoo machine still buzzing on the tray. The camera behind the paint bottles caught it all. Every strike, every grimace. Derek tried to rise again, his pride clearly outweighing his sense. Marissa stepped toward him, her boots silent against the clean floor. He swung clumsily, a desperate looping punch, but she caught his wrist, mid-air twisted, and shoved him against the wall. His back hit the plaster with a hollow thunk. "You don't walk into my shop," she hissed. "You don't touch my people, and you never put your hands on me again." For a long moment, the only sound was the ragged breathing of three men who had never expected their afternoon to end like this. She released Derek's wrist, letting him slump against the wall. He stayed there, rubbing his jaw, his earlier smirk completely erased. Eddie leaned on the counter, trying to steady himself, while Big Tom slouched in the chair, wheezing. Marissa pulled off her gloves slowly, the snap of latex loud in the stillness. She tossed them into the trash, her eyes never leaving Derek's. "You're going to stand up," she said evenly, "and you're going to walk out that door. If you ever come back," she leaned forward, her voice dropping into a razor's edge, "you won't be walking out at all." Derek's mouth opened, but no words came. Finally, he nodded, jerking his chin toward his friends. Eddie and Tom moved first, unsteady but eager to leave. Derek followed, limping slightly, one hand still pressed to his ribs. The door swung shut behind them, the jingle of the bell, oddly cheerful after the storm. Marissa stood in the center of the shop, her chest rising and falling, the heat in her muscles slowly fading. She looked toward the hidden camera, the tiny red light still blinking. A recording like this, it wasn't just evidence, it was insurance. Her revenge wasn't finished, not yet. The real blow would come when everyone else saw exactly who they were. By Sunday morning, the footage was edited. Marissa had clipped it clean, 30 seconds of undeniable proof. Derek's hand on her shoulder, her warning, his smirk, and then the elbow strike that sent him reeling, followed by the chaos of his friends falling apart. No sound except the thuds, the grunts, and the hum of the tattoo machine in the background. It was art in its own way, raw, unfiltered, and damning. She didn't post it herself. That would have been too obvious, too traceable. Instead, she sent it anonymously to a handful of local Instagram accounts known for sharing street fights and neighborhood drama. Within hours, the video was everywhere shared, commented on, dissected, frame by frame. The captions varied. Tattoo artist handles, creeps like a pro. Don't mess with women in their own shop. Free lesson in boundaries, paid in pain. By noon, her phone buzzed non-stop. Friends, clients, even old acquaintances sent her the link, all with the same message. "Is this you?" She responded to none of them. The beauty of silence was that it let the story tell itself. Meanwhile, Derek's world was crumbling. In the comments under the video, his name came up fast. Someone recognized the tattoo on his forearm. Someone else tagged his workplace. By evening, his employer's Facebook page was flooded with angry messages. Eddie's girlfriend publicly dumped him in a post that got almost as many likes as the fight video. Big Tom's gym membership was reportedly revoked after the owner saw the footage. Marissa kept working like nothing had changed. Clients came in with sly smiles, whispering about the mystery tattoo artist who'd put the bullies in their place. A few openly asked for the elbow special as a joke. Business was better than ever. Late in the afternoon, the shop door opened, and Max, the college kid from that awful day, stepped inside. He held up his phone. The video paused on her strike. "You don't have to confirm it," he said, grinning. But that was legendary. She smirked. "Glad you think so." He leaned against the counter. "They're saying Derek's not showing his face anywhere. You really did a number on him." She shrugged. He did it to himself. The truth was, she didn't care about Derek's pride. She cared that every man like him in this city or the next might see that video and think twice before putting their hands on someone without consent. That night, she locked the shop and stepped into the crisp Portland air. The neon sign buzzed faintly behind her, casting red light onto the sidewalk. Across the street, a couple of kids were watching something on a phone, laughing in disbelief. She didn't have to guess what it was. Marissa walked past them without a word, her boots steady on the pavement. The air smelled faintly of rain, and for the first time since that day, her chest felt light. In the end, she hadn't just reclaimed her shop. She'd reclaimed the part of herself that refused to be small, quiet, or diminished. The part that understood exactly when to be patient and exactly when to strike. Some fights aren't about fists or bruises. They're about drawing a line and making it clear it will never be crossed again. Marissa's choice to stand her ground wasn't just revenge. It was a reminder that self-respect is worth defending even when it's uncomfortable or risky. We can't control how others act, but we can control how we respond, and sometimes the most powerful response is one that leaves no doubt. Strength isn't about winning every battle. It's about making sure the wrong kind of people never mistake your silence for weakness again.